He had not expected to wander so far from his patrol route, but Ian had always been the kind of person who chased the faintest signal if it carried even a hint of distress. The outer sectors of the frontier were quiet most days, yet this time a trembling cry had slipped through the static and reached the comset of his small vessel. It was soft and faint, like someone calling from behind dozens of steel doors. Ian changed course without hesitation. The source came from a narrow field of drifting metal shards. Pieces of broken hull floated slowly like frozen leaves. His ship glided between them, and each reflection across his cockpit hinted at the story of how fierce the earlier fight had been. He kept scanning while easing forward by mere meters each minute until he spotted a small escape pod that looked dented and locked from the outside. Something inside moved, and a small light blinked with growing weakness. Ian maneuvered close enough to attach a latch and pulled the pod inside his hold. The door was jammed, so he pried it open with a toolbar. When the latch clicked loose, a figure tumbled gently forward. She was taller than him, but slender in a way that made her movements look like flowing air. Her skin was a pale shade of blue, and her eyes were silver like polished stone. She looked at him with confusion, but relief washed across her face the moment she sensed he meant no harm. She tried to speak, yet her voice cracked from exhaustion. Ian steadied her and guided her to a seat before giving her water and a wrapped ration bar. She held it carefully, as if asking whether she was allowed to eat it. He nodded, and she took one careful bite, then another. Gradually her breathing steadied, and she introduced herself as Lyra. Ian had never met anyone from her people in person, though he had heard. They ruled a vast cluster of worlds far beyond the borderlines. Lyra explained that she was not simply a citizen, but part of her royal lineage, and that her escort ship had been ambushed by raiders who sought leverage over her family. She had escaped only by chance when a blast sent her tumbling into the emergency pod that drifted beyond the raiders' reach. She spoke with a soft clarity that made every detail feel weighted. Ian listened without interruption, and when she apologized for placing trouble on him, he shook his head and insisted she needed no apology. She watched him again with that same puzzled expression. That hinted at something unspoken, like she was studying a rare creature she had never encountered before. He set a course toward the nearest safe station, but before he could activate the jump, Lyra touched his arm. Her silver eyes widened with alarm as she said the raiders had placed a trace on her pod. If he made any major shift in power, they would find them within minutes. Ian paused, then shut off the jump drive at once. He took manual control and threaded his ship carefully through the debris field, searching for a route that might hide their energy trail. Hours passed in silence, broken only by short updates as he adjusted their path. Lyra rested, but kept watching him with quiet focus. She seemed unsettled, yet also oddly impressed by how calmly he managed each challenge. Humans were not known for traveling alone through hostile zones, but Ian had grown up on remote colonies where every trip required both courage and stubborn patience. When they finally reached a cluster of dark rocks that floated in slow orbit around a dying ember of a star, Ian shut down the engines and let his ship drift. The natural static from the star's fading core disrupted long-range scans. They were finally safe from the raiders. At least for a moment, Lyra thanked him with a gentleness that made him feel slightly unsteady. She said she had expected to be taken prisoner or used as a bargaining token, yet instead she had found someone who helped without hesitation. He told her he acted as anyone would, though deep inside he knew that was not true. Many would have ignored the signal. Many would have feared the danger or calculated the benefit first. Lyra insisted her family must be told she was alive. She asked if he could take her home. Ian considered the route and knew it would require crossing several territories, that were not friendly to lone travelers, yet he also knew he could not leave her out here where danger might return. He agreed, and she bowed her head in a gesture of deep gratitude. The journey took 3 days. During that time, they talked in small portions. She told him about her home world, which she described with a kind of wistful longing. Towering gardens that shimmered with bioluminescent light. Rivers that changed color during the night cycle. Cities built around crystal towers that sang when the wind passed through them. Ian listened with quiet amazement. In return, he told her about the colony where he grew up. Dry plains. Rusted repair shops. Nights where the stars looked like grains of salt scattered across a black table dot. It surprised him when she said she wanted to see it one day. Most nobles from powerful realms rarely valued small frontier settlements. But Lyra claimed every world held its own beauty, and that her people often forgot this truth because they lived so comfortably. When they finally approached her system, they were met by an escort of royal guards. Their sleek silver ships locked onto Ian's small craft and guided it through the shimmering gate that led to Lyra's home world. Ian prepared to say goodbye once he landed, yet Lyra held his wrist briefly and whispered that she hoped he would stay until their mother personally thanked him. Her tone held a warmth he had not expected. He followed the guards into a wide hall filled with polished stone and floating lights. The scent of soft flowers filled the air like a drifting cloud. At the far end stood Queen Mara. She was taller than Lyra, with a regal presence that pressed gently yet firmly upon everyone in the hall. She stepped forward with measured grace, then reached out to touch Lyra's cheek in relief. She turned to Ian next. The Queen listened as Lyra recounted what happened. Mara's face tightened at the mention of raiders, then softened when Lyra explained how Ian had risked everything to save her. The Queen approached him slowly, like she was examining a puzzle. She thanked him with a voice deep and calm, and Ian bowed in return. He thought that was the end of the ceremony, but the Queen did something unexpected. She stepped closer and studied Ian with curious intensity. She asked him what drove him to help a stranger from across the stars. Ian replied that no one deserved to be left helpless, and that he simply acted as he hoped others would act if he ever needed aid. Queen murmured something under her breath. She touched her chin with thought, then announced to the hall that any person who risked his life for her daughter deserved more than a simple reward. She declared that he should stand beside the royal line as an honored guest until she decided the full measure of gratitude he was owed. The hall stirred with surprise. Ian tried to protest, but Lyra whispered that refusing the Queen's offering would be seen as disrespect. He sighed softly and allowed the guards to escort him to a guest chamber. The room was far grander than anything he had ever seen. Soft walls that shifted color with mood. A bed that looked like it had been woven from glass feathers. Windows that opened to a view of violet clouds drifting across a shimmering horizon. He tried to sleep, yet his mind kept replaying the moment the Queen looked at him with that strange mixture of curiosity and claim. He had seen officials before. He had been thanked by colony elders and trade captains for helping with rescue or repair missions. None of them had looked at him the way Queen Mara had. Morning came quietly. A servant guided him to the Queen's audience chamber, where Mara sat upon a broad seat shaped from crystal stone. Lyra accompanied her, wearing a faint smile. The Queen explained that humans were rarely known in her realm, yet she found Ion's actions remarkable. She admired the human trait of stubborn bravery, and said such a quality was valuable in her court. Then she spoke the words that froze him. She claimed that by saving the princess, he had unknowingly bound himself to the royal family's ancient code of honor. According to their customs, a life saved carried a bond that granted the savior a place close to the royal protector circle. It was a role often filled by trusted warriors or high nobles. The Queen believed Ian would serve well in this role. He stared at her, not knowing what to say. He had never imagined himself living inside a palace or serving under foreign law. He was a simple pilot from a small colony. Yet Lara watched him with hopeful eyes, and the Queen waited with calm certainty. He felt as if the moment was pulling him forward, the same way he had been drawn through the debris field. When he first heard the distress call, Ian asked what this role required. The Queen replied that he would live within the palace and accompany the princess during key events. His task was to provide counsel and protection in times where trust must be absolute. She assured him he would not be treated as a servant, but as someone valued. Ian thought deeply. He did not like being bound by force, yet he saw no threat in her offer. Instead, he sensed genuine respect. He noticed also the subtle fear in Lyra's expression. She had faced danger and now wanted him near, not only as a protector, but as a familiar presence in a world filled with rigid formality. He accepted the role with quiet words. The Queen's face brightened with satisfaction. She stepped down from her seat and placed her hands upon his shoulders. She declared that from this moment he belonged to her royal circle, and that she would personally oversee his adaptation into their culture. It sounded almost like a claim, though delivered with regal warmth.